Liberal leader Mark Carney wants to outspend former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau by $130 billion, even as most Canadians demand cuts, not more government bloat.
A record 7.3 million Canadians headed to advance voting despite Easter weekend commitments and ballot shortages at some polling stations.
CBC's Rosemary Barton falsely claimed remains of Indigenous children were found at residential schools, contradicting her own network's correction that no remains have been confirmed. Hello Canada, it's Thursday, April 24th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Isaac Lamoureux.
And I'm Geoff Knight.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Liberal leader Mark Carney's costed platform includes $130 billion in new spending, marking a tone-deaf response to the majority of Canadians who want to see a reduction in both government spending and bureaucracy. Carney is looking to outspend the Trudeau government, which already infamously saw the highest spending years in Canadian history, excluding COVID-19 pandemic spending. A recent Leger poll found that 43% of Canadians want to see a reduction in government spending compared to the 20% who agree with the potential increase. Another cohort of 16% said they want to see spending maintained, while the remaining 20% said they don't know. While Carney has promised to, quote, balance the operating budget in 3 years, Canadians appear to be skeptical, with 58% in disbelief of his timeline compared to the 32% who think it can be achieved. Carney has defended the high spending by telling Canadians in Charlottetown PEI on Monday that, quote, we are in a crisis, the worst crisis of our lifetimes, because we are in a fundamental reordering of our relationship with the United States and the global economy. The poll asked Canadians to respond to the 108,000 bureaucrats who were hired since 2016, increasing the cost of the bureaucracy by 73%. When asked what should be done about the size and cost of federal bureaucracy, 53% said it's time for a reduction compared to only 4% who would support an increase. Another 24% said to maintain the status quo, while the remaining 19% didn't know. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accused Carney of attempting to bury his spending plan in the news by revealing it over Easter long weekend when he, quote, thought no one was listening. So, Geoff, what are some of the main criticisms Carney's budget has faced since the Liberals released it?
Yeah, Isaac, since the Liberals released Mark Carney's costed platform on April 19th, it's been hit with a wave of criticism that highlights its disconnect from the Canadian priorities. One of the sharpest critiques, echoed by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in a National Post article on April 21st, is the sheer scale of the $130 billion in new spending, which Poilievre called far more costly than Justin Trudeau. He argued that the plan would add nearly $250 billion to the federal debt, labeling it inflationary and warning it would drive up the cost of food, housing, and everyday goods. This resonates with the Leger poll's finding that 43% of Canadians want reduced government spending, not an increase, making Carney's approach seem tone-deaf. Another major criticism focuses on the lack of fiscal restraint. The Fraser Institute, in a piece published on April 22, pointed out that Carney's platform offers no timeline to balance the overall budget, only promising to balance the operating budget in 3 years, a promise 58% of Canadians doubt, per the Leger poll. Critics argue this mirrors the Trudeau government's habit of borrowing heavily, with debt interest costs already projected at $54.1 billion this year, more than federal healthcare transfers. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation also chimed in on April 20th, slamming the piece for ignoring the 53% of Canadians who want a smaller bureaucracy. They highlighted that Carney's spending doesn't address the 73% cost increase from the 108,000 bureaucrats hired since 2016, instead adding new programs that could bloat the government further. Finally, Poilievre's accusation that Carney released the platform over Easter weekend to bury it suggests a lack of transparency, a sentiment shared by 65% of Canadians in the Leger poll who doubt Carney's ability to manage finances responsibly. The platform's been widely panned as reckless, inflationary, and out of touch with what Canadians want.
Yeah, Geoff, something I just wanted to add quick because I spent many hours looking at both budgets and comparing Poilievre's to Carney's. So basically, both budgets used the baseline PBO's projections for deficit, which was under the Trudeau government, and that deficit would have been $141.7 billion between 2025 and 2028. So Poilievre's plan would see the deficit fall to $100.6 billion, whereas Carney's plan would see it rise to $224.8 billion in new debt.
Canadians decided to beat the election day lines and turned out in record numbers to advance polling stations over the Easter long weekend. Elections Canada estimates that nearly 7.3 million Canadians turned out to vote over the 4-day period between April 18th and April 21st, a new record. This marks a more than 20% increase in turnout at advanced polls compared to the 2021 election, where 5.8 million voters cast their ballot at advanced polling stations, and in 2019, where 4.8 million electors voted. On the first day of advanced polling, the Nonpartisan Elections Agency said that more than 2 million people voted on April 18th, a single-day record at advanced polls. Some Canadians complained that advanced voting would be happening over Easter weekend, an important holiday for Christians across Canada who would be attending church services and family gatherings. Nonetheless, polling stations across the country were packed, with reports of voters waiting in lines for over an hour just to cast their ballot. On the last day of advanced polling, one polling station in Crossfield, Alberta, with high turnout from the local community, saw voters unable to vote for an extended period of time as the polling station ran out of plain ballots. The Crossfield and District Community Center's polling station posted a sign on the office's front door telling voters about the shortage of plain ballots, telling them to return to the polling station at a later time. Crossfield, a small rural community with a population of 4,045 people, is part of the larger riding of Yellowhead, which was easily won by the Conservative Party in 2021, with just over 60% of the vote. In a comment to True North, a spokesperson for Elections Canada said they were notified of the ballot shortage earlier in the day and then replenished the stock of plain ballots within an hour. The Elections Canada spokesperson said, quote, "At one poll at the Crossfield and District Community Centre, high turnout resulted in a temporary shortage of ballots, resulting in a 45-minute wait as supplies were replenished. The additional ballots were requested earlier in the day and were already en route when the first batch ran out." So, Isaac, were there any other rural or remote findings that faced issues with advanced voting?
Yeah, Geoff. So just starting off quick, Elections Canada updated its data today, showing that over 2 million people voted on both Friday and Monday, with closer to 1.5 million voting on each of the weekend days. They also highlighted the number of people that voted in every single province and territory across the country. The provinces with the most turnout were, unsurprisingly, Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia, followed closely by Alberta. So, despite the issues in this Alberta riding, over 16% of Alberta's population have already cast their ballots. I saw some people online suggesting that this could be because Albertans are eager for a change. Although I've begrudgingly watched past elections be called almost without fail before votes in the West are even counted. I did see online that many advanced polling stations allegedly had lines hours long. Luckily for me, when I went to my station in Edmonton over the weekend, there was no line and it was a seamless process. And all the volunteers were very kind as well. Speaking of volunteers, Elections Canada messaged me today informing me that many Albertan ridings are still short volunteers. For example, Peace River Westlock is still missing about 150 vacant positions, so we'll have to wait and see if these vacant positions remain and if they cause any issues on April 28th, Election Day. I did see that two villages in northwestern Alberta voiced concerns that there were no longer polling stations in either community and that they'd have to travel a long distance to cast their ballots. Canadians have also revealed that to avoid long lines at their local polling stations, they were able to go instead to their local returning office to vote, which I was told had much more stations, volunteers, and room. Others have revealed inefficiencies they've uncovered at polling stations, which were possibly the reasons for such long lines. I expect that April 28th could be a late night for all of us as we eagerly await the results. CBC News chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton is facing scrutiny after making a false statement about the discovery of Indigenous residential school sites remarks that contradicted her own network's corrections. During a live panel discussion following the French language federal leaders' debate on April 16th, Barton claimed, quote, "Yes, there have been remains of Indigenous children found in various places across the country." Her comment appeared to be an attempt to discredit Rebel News, whose reporter Drea Humphrey had questioned NDP leader Jagmeet Singh against anti-Christian hatred as it relates to the residential school soil disturbances discovered in 2022. However, CBC issued a clarification the next day, walking back Barton's assertion. Under its corrections and clarifications section, the public broadcaster stated, quote, "As CBC News has reported on multiple occasions what several Indigenous communities across Canada have discovered on the sites of some former residential schools are potential burial sites or unmarked graves. The statement confirmed that no human remains have yet been confirmed." So, Geoff, has Barton ever addressed her factually incorrect comments?
No, Rosemary Barton has not directly addressed her factually incorrect comments about the discovery of Indigenous remains at residential school sites, despite the backlash and CBC's own correction. Following her statement on April 16th during the live panel discussion, where she claimed, yes, there have been remains of Indigenous children found in various places across the country, neither Barton nor her team issued a personal response or apology. A search of her public statements in social media, including her X account, shows no acknowledgement of the error as of April 23rd. Instead, CBC News took the lead, issuing a clarification the next day under its corrections and clarifications section, stating that only potential burial sites or unmarked graves had been discovered, with no confirmed human remains. The correction came after significant pushback, including from Rebel News, which Barton appeared to be targeting with her remark. Critics like Ezra Levant, as noted in the Western Standard article from April 21st, called her out for perpetuating a lie, but Barton has remained silent on the matter, leaving the network's statement as the only official response. Her lack of direct engagement has only fueled the scrutiny she's facing.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.